every interaction I can take, I could pull inspiration from anything. You know, we always knew like we were meant to be, you know what I mean, doing this. It's always felt like destiny in a way.
After achieving the #1 spot on Billboard Hot 100 and Hot Country Songs charts for a bar song Tipsy, and becoming the first black male artist and second black artist to top both charts, and being featured in soundtracks for blockbuster films like Spider-Man, Shaboozey is starting to break down doors in a genre that has left many surprised. African Americans have struggled to find their place in the country genre, but Shaboozey never felt that way. He never felt confined or boxed in. In fact, he cites where he comes from as a reason he's able to fit into so many genres so seamlessly. Overnight success gets thrown around by some, but for those that are in the know about the Virginia artist, they know that this has been a long time coming. Long before the #1 single and long before the Beyonce features, perhaps even longer than his debut album that was released in 2018. For a lot of people, they take great pride in Shaboozey's success because they champion him even when Shaboozey was uncertain if he would ever make it. As you will come to find in this video, and if you don't know about Shaboozey already, he is a unique case study in how things are working in this era for different artists and how doors are being smashed into the different genres that may have prevented or boxed in certain artists of past time. It's a completely different era. He's from Nigerian descent, and even down to how he got his artist name is unique. So Shaboozey is a misnomer on his last name, which translates to God is King in his native Nigerian language. Nelly and many artists of the early 2000s showed him that it was possible to be a musician. Shaboozey recalls, "I and Nelly's stories are similar in that I'm from Virginia, where hip-hop is a part of our scene, but in our rural areas, we're also known for country music. Experimenting with country music was easy for me. When I think of easy for me, I think of the Static Major quote that music is like breathing, it's like a language. And I'm just thinking about like his voice, the color of his voice, and how he's drawing a certain melodies in the acoustic way that is perfectly fitting for country music. And whereas many other artists would struggle to be accepted because it comes so natural for him, I believe he has a different story. And maybe he's accepted differently because so many people can gravitate to him regardless of his skin complexion or his background and where he comes from."
Where I'm from in Virginia, it's like, it's nothing. There's nothing there. It's just like, you know how Nashville's a music city, and
people coming through for concerts. And
yeah, like you're probably exposed to. I wasn't. Nobody around me was exposed to a single instrument. Like we just, you know, maybe you know, if you was, it was like very academia. Like I'm doing this to get my damn AP credit. You know.
Shaboozey references his home state as the reason he's able to do some of the things he's able to do in his career. He says, "In Virginia, I always felt like I could do whatever I wanted and people would accept me. I knew I would never be forced into a box because Virginia is eclectic, from Pharrell to Missy Elliott to Timbaland and Kali Uchis. That's the thing. There are no two artists from Virginia who are alike. We champion individuality. Virginia is a breeding ground for world builders."
I think Virginia just kind of had like an outside looking in mentality, kind of like a dreamers. It's just a place of dreamers because like there's really not much there.
We go back to that world building term of seeing the visual and seeing how people from all walks of lives can have a similar experience, because I honestly believe we're more alike than we are different. And I think that Shaboozey would be a great introduction to, you know, maybe expanding my music palette and taste in the country genre. His story and the representation that is happening in country music. A lot of people that would not normally gravitate to country music, given, you know, maybe the style, maybe the culture, maybe the sonics, are going to be a lot more open to investigating for themselves what they can pick and choose from in that genre that relates to them. Shaboozey speaks of his eclectic influences, saying, "I was introduced to the Rolling Stones and Grateful Dead by a friend's parents, and that got me more into rock like Led Zeppelin." And then later he would get into folk like Bob Dylan. Shaboozey states, "I studied why these artists were so impactful and timeless, and I began playing with different aspects of their music as I built my own style." As he talks about how he's been able to combine all these different influences to build his own unique style. And he talks about through time, he was able to be more accepted in the country genre. And if you ask me, maybe it has a lot to do with how authentic, how raw it sounds, how his voice sounds, how his story sounds. and mixing all these different influences, because there's a lot of great songwriters that he's influenced by, and the only barrier is the language or the channel or the lines of genres that they've traditionally like to box artists in. And we talk about a lot of black artists have struggled to break through in the country genre. They were forced to accept that Beyonce made a country album, and they I don't think they liked it. A lot of people didn't like it. A lot of people loved it, but it also introduced a lot of people, mainly Shaboozey, to a wider audience to be able, from there, maybe you don't enjoy Beyonce's take on country music, but you may love Shaboozey's take on country music. And Shaboozey is just taking a melting pot of all his influences, from rock to folk to pop to R&B to country, and building it in and creating this type of welcoming environment that is suitable for all music listeners. Because, you know, if his goal is to be accessible, which I think it is, to be as accessible as he can, he's gonna do things in the songwriting and the visuals to garner a wide audience, and essentially he will be a household name, and that's gonna be big for representation. It's gonna be big for the genre, and that's gonna be big for people that look like him. That he talks about heartbreak and regret on his songs, but he also talks about partying and living life to the fullest, and that's that type of complete experience, that duality that's very relatable to a lot of people. That type of raw emotion is something that people look for in an era where there's so much manufactured music and AI inspired data dumps in music that has stripped the soul from music. And I think we are in an era where people just want to hear real art from real people.
And then everything happens this year. Has anybody called you an overnight success, like without knowing actually like what went into this?
Not really, which is kind of was like the blessing of the whole situation. For like a lot of years, like there was like people in my comments that were just like, they're like, this is the year he blows up. It's like 2014.
Jeff Gordon is kind of blowing. I mean, it's blowing up for 2015.
Okay,
like 50,000 plays at 2015 was a lot. You know what I mean?
How old are you then?
I'm probably at 18.
It's like 2016, and like he's blowing up this year. I know.
Like I would go to school, like and people would know who I was. Like they'd be like, "Oh, you made that song." Like I had this song called.
Also, you're putting songs out.
I put a song out by now. Like
what
I put
are we putting them out on
crazy.
back then. What are we talking?
SoundCloud. It's on SoundCloud. I put out this song called Jeff Gordon.
To just defy all expectations, especially like, you know, you've been making music for a while.
I've just been working at this for so long. I've been signed to major labels. There's been a lot of people waiting for something like this to happen for me. For some of the people on my team, it's been 4 years, 10 years. But for me, it's been all my life. My parents thought there was no way to make it into this world at all. But then Shaboozey began to slowly book shows for hundreds of dollars as his name circulated in Virginia. And then a couple records took off for him. Now, as fans, we may not know every single detail from A to Z on how our favorite artists or how new artists came into the fold and became mainstream acts, or at least in the public discourse of mainstream media and music, and they collaborate with bigger artists. We sometimes don't know. We question the authenticity. We have no idea, but we know tidbits from what they share in interviews and stuff like that. But I think the common thread with a lot of artists like Shaboozey, who have a true intention to have a purpose, and I feel like certain fans can gravitate and be like, that music feels real to me. There's a common concept of divine timing, and when your timing is right, nobody can take that away from you. And I feel like some people step into alignment naturally with their music and their art, because I think that art and music creation, that whole process is a spiritual process. And I think if you're ready for things to take off for you, you have to be ready. You have to be prepared. And if you're prepared for the next steps, you will naturally go to that next level. And sometimes artists, they go to that next level and they're not ready for it, and then they fall down a peg, and maybe their career goes like this, and maybe they learn from those experiences, and they're so talented it allows them to still be in the game and still make music that still touches people, that still resonates with people, excuse me. But they are natural ebbs and flows of everybody's career, and when artists least expect it, that's when the blow up happens. That's when the next step of their career happens. And Shaboozey will say in his story that, hey, this may never happen for me. I have no idea, but I'm ready for it. I'm going to stay ready for it. I'm going to put my best foot forward and put the art and the visuals that connect with me. And because it connects with me, I'm certain that it will at least connect with somebody else. Now, where I go from here, only God knows. Shaboozey was introduced to his co-manager, Abbas Patsi, after he moved to Los Angeles. And his manager knew immediately that the sound Shaboozey was going for, and he knew that Shaboozey had the potential to mix multiple genres together for a unique sound. Patsi says, there was something that no one was doing. I felt like he was building something special. It was something fresh and new, and I knew if he leaned into it, he would be a superstar. Shaboozey's sister introduced him to Brandy, as well as sounds from the early 2000s. He also recalls being first introduced to the country genre by his father.
Do you remember when the first time you had a country music influence?
Yeah, I mean, my dad, so it's a weird story. Like my dad, so I'm Nigerian, right? I'm first generation. But my dad moved here and he went to Texas when he came out here. He was playing me like Kenny Chesney and stuff like that. No, not Kenny Chesney, Kenny Rogers. Because at that time, you just in the back seat, they just playing stuff and you just remembering the melodies and stuff like that.
Now with Shaboozey as obviously the subject for this video, I'm very inspired in his story and how he got from A to Z. And it's caused me to reflect on why I like doing these videos and what I got out of just studying my favorite artists when I was 19, 20. And just being so enamored with their process and how they got here. And I always had several questions when, I thought that school wasn't for me, and Shaboozey described in these interviews that school wasn't for him, so he had to figure out. So I just had a couple of questions like, how did you figure it out?
So you drop out, you think you got to get a job now, right?
Yeah, I was like, I just started hustling. I was like, all right, when is the semester over? Like, it was the beginning of the semester. I was like, yeah, I'm not doing this. So I got until the end of the semester to figure out what's going on.
When did you know it was a moment to make that jump, to leave your hometown, to, live in LA, because LA is expensive? How did it work? How did you make your parents understand? How were they on board? As art and pursuing music is so unconventional, it's hard to make sense of why you're going to be successful. When so many fail, why are you the one that's going to break through? And, he described that one of the first songs that popped off for him was Jeff Gordon. And him having African parents, Nigerian parents, it spread through his parents' colleagues, and they found the song and put his parents on and was like, I understand what you're doing. So that's motivating, inspiring. How did you find your manager? When did you know, if you did or you didn't know, that this song, a bar song, Tipsy, was going to go #1? How did it feel?
I was in the studio with my producer. I was like, yo, we should flip this song.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then we flipped it. It was an acoustic version. It was just a guitar. You know what I mean? It was just
So good.
It was just like it was just this and me singing.
And then, we were just like watching it, and then like the first 5 minutes, like the first 2 minutes, we already had like 100,000, 200,000, and then it was just cool to see it do that.
And afterwards, did you build around the song to create an identity for yourself? Was that something had to go in order for this to succeed? Because there's always pros and cons to success. When you gain something, you lose another. So what was the cost for fame for Shaboozey? And how do you feel so comfortable being in the spotlight? You go most of your life being a regular individual, and then suddenly, the overnight success theory, suddenly everybody knows you.
Getting an award, especially one through Billboard, has been something that legends do, man. You got the Beatles and all these different acts that have been able to make history in that space. So it's cool for me to get some recognition there too as well.
All these things are interesting for me. And, if there's any Shaboozey fans or just people that are just, they like these type of videos, what are you most invested about a story? What are some of the things that you question about him? What are some of the things that leave you figuring out, does this make sense or does this not make sense? Is this authentic to you? Authentic to you? And what do you gravitate to most about his story? Let me know in the comments.
You know what I mean? Real ones know when you close your. I think that's what my thing is. When you close yourself off to something, you are like, you know what I mean? You don't know what you can learn from somebody else.